Alright, down this hole where the Leviathan infant was is the final boss. Well, the final series of bosses, because what's the end game of Metroid Prime without a boss gauntlet? Also, I have a surprise guest, just because.
Also, Prime 3 is the one I played the least, but I like it more than Prime 2.
You may actually recognize this guest from Metroid Prime 2 if you were around for it.
Yes, you messed up on a missile expansion pretty badly. I remember that.
No, not for the
Hello,
stream.
Dark
Let's
Samus.
play. Well, in any case, when you reach Dark Samus down here, this actually marks a checkpoint, and I actually think that it's better to go into this final battle with a completely empty phase-on gauge. So, what I'm actually doing here is intentionally getting myself killed so that I can, one, have an empty gauge for the fight, and two, show off the phase-on corruption death screen, because I have yet to do that. I'm sure this is what you did the first time you played the game, too.
I got an empty gauge.
Like, intentionally kill yourself here to get an empty phase-on bar.
No, I just fought her with what I had.
Yeah,
in Hypermode I did that, though.
Okay, in Hypermode then, sorry. Well, thankfully, hitting Dark Samus marks a checkpoint.
And you never showed this off before?
I never showed this off before because I'd never died by corruption. If you die while in corrupt Hypermode, Samus basically turns into another Dark Samus and dies.
Yep.
So now that we have an empty phase-on bar, let's try this again. I will say it now that this fight is probably the toughest boss in the series.
Samus?
Dark Samus in Metroid Prime 3. I can't think of anything that's harder.
I can.
Really?
Yeah.
What would that be?
Yakuza.
Yakuza's not in Metroid Prime.
Oh, in the Prime series?
Yeah, in the Prime series.
Yeah, this is the hardest boss in the Prime series.
Yeah, some people could argue that Emperor Ing is harder, but I still think that this edges it out.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily just because of this fight, but it's because of afterward. And if you die after this, you'll have to start from this phase again. Now, Dark Samus has pretty much all of her attacks from Metroid Prime 2 and then some.
Yep. Which means after images.
Most of the attacks that she throws at you, you can destroy for health. Like those missiles you can shoot for health. This attack you'll actually have to stand behind one of the phase-on pillars to avoid. You can't dodge it otherwise. Now you may be looking at the attacks that she's firing at you, and you're thinking, are you crazy? This looks easy. Believe me, it gets much harder.
It's not that easy.
After you deal a certain amount of damage to Dark Samus, she will absorb Phase-On from Phase's core, regenerating her health. You want to fire at her as quickly as possible to make sure she regenerates a minimal amount of health. And she takes a lot more punishment on Hypermode, so she's going to regenerate a lot more health. Not to mention, she just has a lot more health to begin with.
Yeah.
After the first, what are they? After the first recovery, she'll start using that shockwave attack. Also bear in mind that whenever she has that big blue glow around her, she is invincible, so don't bother firing at her. Because Dark Samus is so mobile, I would strongly recommend using charge shots over single shots. When you deal a set amount of damage to her, she will split in two, and eventually three.
Yep, this is where it gets fun.
Yeah, this is where the fight gets very hard. What you need to do in order to... You need to figure out which one is the real Dark Samus. There is a very minor difference. I think it's in the color of her visor, but you won't be able to see that from this distance. When she uses a sweeping beam attack, it is best to go into Morph Ball and start using the Hyper Ball on her. That'll also damage the Dark Echo. The Dark Echo can be destroyed and will drop some anti-phazon units, but I find that killing the Dark Echo...
It's not as effective as just dealing the damage to Dark Samus.
Exactly. Now, if you can get into Morph Ball quickly enough, that beam attack is basically free damage. I don't find Hyper Missiles at all useful because one, she's faster than them, and two, she deflects missiles with a shield. Now, most of the time when Dark Samus is vulnerable, you're going to have her and her Dark Echoes firing on you all at once, and it's very difficult to keep track of what all goes on in this fight.
Yep.
And when she has Dark Echoes, they'll join her in healing, and like that, if you shoot the wrong one first, it'll just disappear, and she'll regenerate more health. That's probably the most frustrating part of the fight, and one of the things that I think makes this fight really luck-based.
And the fact that once... Oh, she's at 3.
Yeah, she goes to 3 when you get her...
This is fun.
Health.
This part is very fun.
This part is probably where you're going to take the most damage, and she starts using a couple of new attacks, like this attack.
I don't like it.
If you can get into a rhythm with either jumping or just dodging, you shouldn't get hit by this attack, and I have no clue why people have so much trouble dodging this attack. And usually right after doing that attack, she'll do this one where Dark Samus and her Dark Echoes will launch missiles at you. These missiles will occasionally drop anti-phazon units, so you can use this to get some health back. You want her using this attack because you can also take a few shots at her while she's firing those missiles.
I don't like how long that attack lasts sometimes.
What, the blender?
Yeah.
If you're good at dodging it, you can also get some shots in on her while she's doing it too.
Yes, but it's annoying to do that, and I much prefer her other attacks.
I actually think, in this part of the battle where she's most vulnerable, that's split up like this, I think that this is the part where you're most liable to lose health, just because you don't really have time to look at your radar with what's all going on in the fight. I mean, admit it, there is a lot going on at all times in this boss fight.
Yep, that's why it's the hardest one in Prime. Still don't like Yakuza.
Another thing that's very frustrating about this fight is when she fires her spread when you have no cover. Because there's nothing you can do to dodge that, and it does a lot of damage. I think it does almost 100 damage.
Yeah, that's kind of another thing that makes it luck-based.
There is one little reprieve to this boss gauntlet, though, is they definitely put the hardest one first. Now, it's very fortunate when that happens, but then you also have to deal with the other two clones. I would say right now I'm doing about average.
Yeah.
I'd like to be a little bit lower on health. You know, a little bit lower on Phazon so I have more room to work with. Because Phase's health bar is weird. Another issue with the missile attacks and the multiple charges is if you get hit by one, you're probably going to get hit by all of them.
And you lost track of the one of the clones, but it didn't really matter because you couldn't dodge that anyways.
There's a lot, like I was saying, there's just so much that can go wrong in this fight really quickly. And I think one of the secrets to this fight is learning how to deal with this particular attack. Because if you don't know how to deal with that attack, it's going to hit you probably 5 or 6 times. There's enough that's luck-based in this fight. You don't need to take damage from stuff that you can dodge with enough practice.
Oh, your health's getting up high.
Yeah, I let it get out of control, and I think even though you do risk getting hit by the spread, when your health bar is up this high, it's actually better just to break the phazon pillars because they will give you anti-phazon units. You pretty much need to know everything in this battle that gives you anti-phazon units.
Yeah. Anti-phazon is really nice for this battle.
Just because she has at least one, maybe 2 attacks that you're going to take damage on pretty much no matter what. The difficulty jump from veteran to hyper mode on this fight is absolutely incredible.
Yes.
There is no amount of practicing on veteran mode that will make you good enough at this fight. And always keep an eye on the health bar when she's split up, because when you find the one that deals damage, stay locked onto it.
Yeah.
And if you can get some shots in on the Dark Echoes without going too far out of your way, that's a good idea as well, because the Dark Echoes drop multiple anti-phazon units, and they're just nuisances in general. That was unfortunate.
Sorry about that. Let's see.
Now you may be wondering why I'm able to stay at such a high life bar for so long. Well, that's because just like with like all the other item drops, it's more likely to give you more and bigger anti-phazon units the lower you are on health, so you can just dirtle up at about this level of phazon and stay in the battle. You just have to be very careful not to get hit a whole bunch of times.
You know what I never understood about this fight? Or phase at all?
What?
Why is there anti-phazon?
I have no clue.
Yeah, that never made any sense to me.
Well, Phase's health system in general doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but it is a very nice concept that I certainly wasn't expecting my first.
Yeah, it was cool. It was cool. It's just, if you think about it, the planet made of phazon shouldn't have something that destroys it. Ooh, that's not good.
Yeah, you're usually going to cut this fight pretty close. But you see what I mean about shooting everything for anti-phazon?
It is important. Very important.
If you die, most likely if you die in this fight, in this boss gauntlet, it's going to be in this fight, just because how insanely hard the end of this fight is. It's not necessarily that she goes through different phases, well she does, but even at this point, the lower you get her down on health, the more dangerous she becomes. Pretty much like every Square RPG boss these days. Yeah, I got a little aggressive here trying to finish this fight now.
Oh, and Raiko.
Yeah.
You know that move Dark Samus does where she shoots up the electricity in the air?
Yeah?
You can hit her with a Hyper Missile.
That sure would have been nice to know. But it's kind of late now that she's almost dead.
Yeah. Well, at least they'll know. That might make it easier for people playing along.
Yeah. Okay, there we go. Unfortunately, once we defeat Dark Samus, it's not over. Remember that Aurora unit that the pirates got from the GFS Valhalla 313?
Remember that Mother Brain they got?
Well, 313 is right here, and Dark Samus merges with 313. We have to fight 313.
Which is either easy or hard depending on how well you did in the Dark Samus fight.
Now, 313 is definitely easier than Dark Samus by a long shot. But the issue I have with this fight is it's extremely tedious, and you have a secondary goal in this fight. You may notice that I'm not even trying to inflict damage on the Aurora unit right now. The reason why is because almost everything, I think like all but one attack that the Aurora unit uses can drop you anti-phazon. So the goal of this fight is to reduce your phazon bar down to nothing. Yes, even on Hypermode difficulty, it is entirely possible and pretty much required that you get your phazon bar down to basically empty. It's pretty easy, actually. Just that beam is the only thing that can really do a lot of damage to you. It's very hard to actually die on this phase, just because the only real threatening attack that the Aurora unit has is that beam, and once you understand the pattern, it's pretty easy to dodge it. The only reason why you would ever get hit by that beam is if it spawns right on top of you.
Also, just in case you didn't know, Aurora unit is somewhat similar to Mother Brain.
I think I actually touched on that earlier in the Let's Play. And I mentioned that this was done intentionally. Now those phazon tentacles will shoot an attack at you if you take too long, but that's generally how you deal damage to the Aurora unit. But I would rather not deal damage, because even though the Aurora unit only has 2 distinct phases, its attacks will get more aggressive the lower it is on HP. I'm not exactly sure what hit me there. But in any case, the way I wouldn't deal any damage, because the lower the Aurora unit is on health, the more likely the Dark Echoes will turn into their boost ball form, and once they turn into their boost ball form, you can't get anti-phazon units from them, and they can just randomly hit you.
Because that's fun.
If you leave the Aurora unit alone, the chances of the Dark Echoes going into boost ball form is virtually 0. Now, one method you can choose to do that'll make this fight go by a little bit faster, but it's riskier, is always keeping the Aurora unit's HP just above half while you're restoring your phazon bar. I mean, look how much phazon we've gotten back. What do you think? Do you think this fight's more tedious than Maganar?
More tedious than what?
More tedious than Maganar. You know, Maganar, the boss that everybody gets mad at?
No.
You don't think this is more tedious than Maganar? I sure think so.
No, I mean, I don't know which one you're talking about.
The Brio boss?
I don't remember that thing's name. But the giant statue, yeah, it's more tedious than that thing. I think it's easy if you know how to fight it.
I actually disagree. I think that this fight is more tedious than Maganar.
Yeah, I said that. Magnar's easy if you know how to fight him.
It's just that the Aurora unit is... You saw when I shot those tentacles out how there's... how the hole turns yellow. That's what you're supposed to shoot at, and that doesn't even deal damage. And it takes a lot of volleys on, it takes a lot of volleys to be able to stun it. And then even when you get it stunned, you can't do that much damage to it.
Yep. I agree that it's more tedious than Magnar. Like I said, Magnar's really easy.
Not on Hypermode.
I find them pretty easy.
Now, ideally, what you want to do is just jump over this beam and have it be on your alternating on your left and your right, and just jump as it retracts. That's the easiest way to dodge it. And getting hit by that beam will undo a lot of work. I'd like to get a little bit lower on Phazon before I start dealing damage to the Aurora unit.
Well, you're doing good so far.
Well, I haven't done any damage. I just want to get that bar down. I guess it doesn't have to go down all the way, but I would definitely recommend getting it at, like, less than 20% full. You want to have it as low as possible. Yeah, that right there is an issue with the fight. It's just sometimes the purple beam spawns directly on top of you and there's nothing you can do about it. Also, see those little camera things that are popping out of the Aurora unit from time to time? If you can shoot one of those out, it's very hard to do. You almost have to anticipate where it comes up. But if you can shoot one of those out, you can get a lot of damage in on the Aurora unit. I never really had much experience fighting this guy on Veteran because it essentially felt like a throwaway boss battle on that difficulty. And yes, 313 is a male.
313.
Aurora Unit 313.
Yeah.
I think the only female Aurora unit in this game is 242. I'm not quite sure how the Aurora units even have genders anyway. Aren't they just supercomputers?
They're biological supercomputers.
Right.
They're basically, the lore behind them is the Federation took the Chozo's data on Mother Brain and tried to replicate it. And they didn't replicate it entirely correctly, but they did make stronger computers than they had. Because no one can really replicate Chozo technology perfectly.
Because as we all know, ancient technology is better than modern technology, always.
Yep.
You know, one of these days I really need to just go get 100% scans and read through the logbook.
That's gonna take a while.
Especially for 3. Of course, I have so many projects going on right now that... What the hell hit me? It wasn't the laser. I don't quite understand what hit me back there. veteran mode takes a lot less time because it takes, what, half the time to stun the Aurora unit, and she has like half the health. Okay, I knocked out one of the little camera things inside the Aurora unit, so what's going to happen is I'm going to be able to fire a whole bunch here, and I'm not quite sure why I was just journaling for so long. Okay, got a full stun. When you have a full stun on the Aurora unit, you're going to need to walk over to the front of it and pull its faceplate off with the grapple beam. Then you have time to put into its brain a full charge shot and maybe a couple of hyper missiles. I would say
good chunk of damage.
I would say that volley was about average. It could be a little bit better, but I didn't exactly have the greatest angle, and the Aurora unit was still moving around. That was sloppy. That laser hit was very sloppy. There was no reason for that. Also, those of you playing along, I would strongly recommend that if you're having trouble with this boss, I would only try like twice a day. Once in like early in the day and once late in the day, because each attempt at this boss fight is going to take at least 40 minutes, and if you remember how much your wrist or your hand hurt from fighting Maganar, this is worse.
And you have to fight Dark Samus ahead attack.
Honestly, fighting Dark Samus is more mentally exhausting than physically exhausting.
Yep. You still gotta do it.
Yeah. In this fight, and even the one after it, there's a lot less to keep track of. Honestly, this fight reeks more of fake difficulty than anything.
You got your phase on down to a pretty good level.
Yeah. Yeah, this level or lower is about where you want to have it.
Yep.
I have been able to completely empty it a couple of times. It's just very hard to get rid of the last bit of it because the drop rate for health decreases. Also, if you're going to shoot those little things out, I would recommend using charge shots instead of regular shots, so you can get a few small hits in instead of trying to get big hits in and probably miss. And even while the phase-on tentacles are out, the little cameras will pop out as well. That's probably your best time to hit them, because they can only pop out in one of two locations. And since you have to anticipate where they are anyway, I just am not quite fast enough to get at those. Is there any reliable way to hitting those other than just getting lucky? Yeah. Oh, I got it empty completely. They don't take, it doesn't take too many hits to shoot them out, it's just that they're vulnerable for less than a second.
but I'm checking if Booknotes is anything. It suggests not bothering with him.
Really? The guide suggests not bothering with them?
Yeah.
I try to stumble my way into him because if you can hit one and knock one of them out, you pretty much get a near guaranteed full stun. And I think it's worth going for it because this fight takes long enough as it is, and trying to just stun them through traditional means, like 1 or 2 shots at a time, just drags the fight out even more and can make attempts take 45 minutes, maybe even an hour. And that's a long time to have to be able to concentrate. Especially later on in the fight when the Aurora unit gains new attacks.
Yep, that's gonna be fun.
That was kind of a missed opportunity right there. Because it never pops out of the same hole that it retreated into, and all 3 of the holes were being used already, so I knew where it came from. Okay, there we go, got a full stun. I think I've got a better angle as well. If you can stay square with it, you might even be able to get 2 hyper missiles in, but it's hard. I've actually got the Aurora unit's health about where I want it to be, because I think I can get in another volley and have it be just above half. Yeah, there's the Dark Echoes boost balling. They're invincible while in that form, and they can just randomly hit you, and it's really frustrating.
Yeah.
They turn back into their normal form just as they disappear, so you have no chance of getting anti-phazon units from them. Oh, nothing on that. And that's another issue, is they don't all transform at the same time until the end of the fight, so you can get unlucky by running into one that transforms quickly, or if you're a little slow, it can even be possible to get none of them. And those Dark Echoes are your main source of anti-phazon units, because they drop almost every time you kill them.
You're doing good on health still, though.
Well, this is about expected, to be honest, since this part of the fight is really easy. Although I probably could have started attacking the Aurora unit a little bit earlier into the fight, since you get so many anti-phazon units just from what you have to do.
Yep. Oh, here comes the beam. Or not. I thought it was a beam.
Yeah, the animation for a beam is slightly different. And you can dodge it with pretty good consistency if you can stay to one side while she fires it at you, because then you just have to time your pass, really, and that's not terribly hard. Like that. You just let the beam pass through left and right. Almost got that one that time. There we go.
Nice.
Now, a full stun off this is not guaranteed, but it's close. And another thing I hate is when the
head
goes to exactly the opposite side, so because sometimes you might not get back to it fast enough. I got lucky and was able to pull it off pretty quickly. And then when you have to pull it off quickly like that, you just get a really sucky angle. Now, I believe the Aurora unit is just barely above half-life, which is absolutely perfect. Like, it is literally pixels above the threshold for using its attack that I don't like. That attack can also give you health, but the method for dodging it is unreliable, and it has a really big hitbox for some reason. Like, bigger than you would think. Really, though, the main obstacle is getting your health down. Once you get your health down to about this level, the fight goes faster than you think.
Nice.
Yeah, once they start going into boost ball quickly, you can get one, maybe two of them, never all three.
And that's also when you want to start going for Aurora unit, because you're gonna start running out of your anti-phase on supply and keep going for it.
Well, you can't attack the Aurora unit while the Dark Echoes are out.
I know. I mean, that's when you want to start killing it, though. As in, not stalling anymore.
I'm not really stalling right now, though.
Still, at this point, you don't want to just hang out and get your face on down anymore.
Well, I'm pretty actively going after it now.
Yeah, I'm saying for people who are using the strategy of getting their face on down after it passes.
Well, I really think that that's the only way to go about this fight.
Yeah, but at this point, it's a little dangerous to do that.
I certainly wouldn't spend too much time harvesting Phazon after half health.
You of course still want to get anti-Phazon, but you shouldn't pass up the opportunity to do damage just because you don't have your Phazon down all the way.
That was a very fortunate Dark Echo kill there.
Yeah, that was a nice one.
It was pretty lucky. Oh, there we go. I think I got a good angle, too. I'm actually unsure if Hyper Missiles do more damage than just spamming the Phazon beam. Or the Hyper Beam, sorry. Wrong game.
Phazon beam pretty much is Hyper Beam.
Okay, we should be able to get the Aurora unit in 2 more volleys. 3 at the most. Unfortunately, now that the Aurora unit's below half health, he gets a pretty dangerous attack. And you should see it quite a bit. Okay, it'll retreat back into the center and then start firing at you. There's 2 ways to dodge this attack. One involves just standing in place and shooting the orbs, but they have a huge blast radius, so even when you think you shot them, you'll still get caught in the explosion. The other method is to back away from the orbs, either clockwise or counterclockwise. I don't think one method is any more effective than the other. It really depends on style, I would say. And you'll learn a lot of things about this fight as you fight it. At this point, I was...
That attack's fun.
At this point, I was mainly trying to figure out which method would work better for me. Those orbs will drop anti-phase on units, but generally what'll happen is you'll pick up 3 or 4 anti-phase on units and get hit by 2 or 3 of those orbs, so it'll be a wash. Now, those of you playing along definitely won't want to be quite as conservative as I am here. I'm just one of those players that wants to only do it one time, even if it's slow, but unfortunately, when it doesn't end up working, it's very frustrating. Now, another thing that makes that cannon attack particularly frustrating is that the 7 or 8 cannons, couldn't see how many it is, they fire in a random order, so you don't know where the shots are going to be coming from. If they fired in a set order, then a little muscle memory would be very helpful. But the order in which they fire is completely random.
Hope he's near a stun soon.
He better be. He better be, or I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. I'm really unable to maintain my phase on anymore. I don't even know how many shots it is. I know it's a lot. That was another missed opportunity. Now, one reason why you want to stay in motion for this attack is because the shots fired do not account for your current movement. So as long as you stay moving in the same direction, you can dodge some of them. But unfortunately, some will just hit you anyway. Wow, those were 3 pretty nice hyper missiles.
Yeah, that was really nice volley. I think you can get him in the next one.
I'll get him in the next volley without question. It's just a matter of how much more damage am I going to take before I get that volley in. And now the Dark Echoes will basically turn Boost Ball on sight, so you can get to maybe one of them if you're quick. And if all 3 of them are bouncing around, you're going to get hit at least once and probably multiple times. That was another missed opportunity. Not that one though, because I didn't have a charge shot ready. I think it's only reliable to hit any of the Aurora unit's targets with charge shots.
Because charge shots in Hypermode are really ridiculous.
Oh, no damage, awesome. I got through that volley without taking any damage. It's really rare for that to happen. And backing away from the what are they? Backing away from the boost balling Dark Echoes doesn't really help you too much because they move way faster than you do and you can't really see them. That beam came out of nowhere and I was a little scared to see it when it happened, even though it spawned way to the left of me. I would say out of Out of all the bosses in the final boss gauntlet, this one is probably the least random. There we go. When you're down to this point in the Aurora unit fight, actually reducing your phase on bar is unrealistic. You just want to try to maintain your current level as much as possible, and that was very close to getting a second kill. Not quite, though.
Nice dodge.
Yeah, I was really surprised I was able to get out of the way of that one, too. Alright, there we go. Not doing a very good job at actually doing damage, though. Okay, there we go. Full stun and a good spot to fall on top of. Okay, unfortunately, when you deplete the Aurora unit's health bar, it only severs the cable. There are a lot of caveats to this fight, though. The Aurora unit is constantly vulnerable, but you saw that little bit of anti-phazon that the Aurora unit dropped. That's all the anti-phazon you get, and this spider laser attack is probably the most frustrating attack that the Aurora unit will perform. There are two ways to dodge that attack, and
that attack's fun too.
There are two ways to dodge that attack. The riskier way, which will get you more clean shots, is by trying to stay under it. The problem I have with that method is you are unable to see where the Aurora unit is because obviously you're directly under it. The method that I actually prefer using is I prefer trying to stay as far away from the Aurora unit as possible because the lasers only have a set range. The issue with that strategy is if he floats over to where you are, he'll usually hit you more than once, and the lasers do a lot of damage. Now that thing that I was shooting out underneath it that was glowing yellow, if you can shoot that all the way out, you will be able to stun the Aurora unit. But it's nearly impossible to do on Hypermode. I don't think I've ever pulled it off. And this attack is really cheap too. I don't see a way that it telegraphs which way it's going to move at all.
I don't know either.
If you can shoot the Aurora unit enough during that attack, it will become stunned and you can get a good volley in on it. I wouldn't recommend using hyper missiles here. I would just recommend using regular shots and charge shots. The thing that makes this particular battle super hard is that there are no health pickups.
Yep, gotta rush it.
Another very irritating thing about the spider laser attack is the amount of time that it is on for is variable. So you can't just count in your head, like 2, 3, 4, 5, okay, the attack's gonna stop. And it's hugely variable, too. Unfortunately, my pacing sucks. And for some reason, turning around to get to the Aurora unit's weak point takes a long time, or takes a lot out of that stun time.
Ooh, this is gonna be close.
I don't think I've got a great shot at it myself.
This is gonna be very close. Either that or you're just gonna die.
Now when it fires that blue ball of energy, it will be stunned after that for a little bit, so you can get a few shots in, but not too many. Jumping over that shockwave is pretty important. Use screw attack if you have to, but you shouldn't if you time it correctly. And at this point, I stopped caring about trying to shoot the thing out and just focused on making its weak point vulnerable. Excuse me. But the spider laser attack is definitely the most threatening attack the Aurora unit has. But right there, do you see how effective it is just to hold back?
You're just holding back?
No, no, I don't mean like pulling back on the control stick. I mean just staying away from it.
Oh.
Unfortunately, it is looking highly unlikely that I'm going to win this fight. Yep.
Yeah, that's
dead, pretty much. I'm just going to use the rest of this fight to learn more about the boss. Or I can just get killed, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that fight is just...
Boss gauntlets.
Stupid hard. And if you get killed, you have to start all the way back from Dark Samus.